Right now, as you're watching this video, America's electrical grid is on the verge of collapse, and according to government experts, blackouts could increase by 100 times within the next 5 years. In this video, you'll discover which 11 states are most at risk for catastrophic blackouts in 2025, why our power grid is failing despite having more technology than ever before, and most importantly, the exact steps you need to take right now to protect yourself and your family when the lights go out. Welcome to Crisis Horizon, where we help you prepare for the unexpected. If you value being informed and ready, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss critical information that could save your life. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that nobody in power wants to admit. America's electrical grid is facing an unprecedented crisis, and the math simply doesn't add up anymore. We're dealing with a widening gap between electricity supply and demand that's growing larger every single day. Our power grid was designed in the mid-20th century for a completely different world. Back then, large coal and nuclear plants provided steady, predictable electricity around the clock. It was reliable, it was constant, and the infrastructure was built to handle it. But today, that world no longer exists. Many of these reliable power sources are being shut down and replaced with renewables like solar and wind. Now, before anyone gets upset about politics, this isn't about whether renewables are good or bad, it's about the reality of what they can and cannot do. Solar and wind are inherently intermittent. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and we don't yet have the battery technology at scale to make up for those gaps. At the exact same time, demand for electricity is absolutely exploding. Electric vehicles are flooding the market, each one requiring massive amounts of power to charge. Data centers are popping up everywhere to handle our digital lives. Some people are even mining cryptocurrency from their homes, pulling incredible amounts of energy from the grid. All of this is happening simultaneously, and the infrastructure simply cannot keep up. The result? A crisis that's been building for years and is now reaching a breaking point. And this isn't alarmism or conspiracy theory. The Department of Energy and the North American Electric Reliability Corporation have issued reports painting a sobering picture. If current trends continue, blackouts could increase by 100 times by 2030. Let that sink in. 100 times more blackouts than we experience now. But it gets worse. The threats facing our grid go far beyond just supply and demand. We're dealing with a perfect storm of vulnerabilities that are converging at the worst possible time. First, there's the infrastructure itself. Most of our transmission lines, substations, and power plants were built decades ago. They're aging, they're deteriorating, and they weren't designed to handle the stress we're putting on them today. Second, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more severe. Polar vortexes, heat waves, hurricanes, wildfires, these aren't just inconveniences anymore. They're putting massive strain on grid infrastructure that's already operating at the edge of its capacity. Third, we're facing unprecedented cybersecurity threats. Foreign adversaries and criminal organizations are constantly probing our electrical grid for weaknesses. A successful cyber attack could take down power for millions of people. Finally, there's the interconnected nature of the modern grid. When a problem occurs in one area, it doesn't just stay there. It can ripple outward, causing failures in neighboring systems, which then cause more failures, until what started as a local issue becomes a regional or even national disaster. We saw this in 2003 with the Northeast blackout, when a problem in Ohio cascaded across 8 states and parts of Canada, leaving 50 million people without power. Now let's talk about which parts of America are most vulnerable. Let's break down the 11 states most at risk for major blackouts in 2025. Michigan is facing what experts call a perfect storm of grid vulnerabilities. The state's industrial base is rapidly transitioning to electric vehicle manufacturing, and these factories are consuming as much power as small cities. But at the same time Michigan is dramatically increasing its electricity demand, it's shutting down coal and nuclear plants. The state is now relying heavily on aging natural gas infrastructure. And during polar vortex events, when temperatures plunge to dangerous lows, natural gas supplies get stretched incredibly thin. Add in ice storms from the Great Lakes that can damage transmission lines and leave entire regions without power for days, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Louisiana's grid is among the oldest in the entire nation. Much of the infrastructure dates back to the 1960s. The state relies heavily on natural gas plants, but many of them are located in flood-prone areas. When hurricanes and storm surges hit, they can destroy entire generating facilities, leading to outages that last weeks, not days. The heat and humidity accelerate equipment degradation faster than almost anywhere else in the country. And the state's massive industrial sector, especially refineries and chemical plants, requires huge amounts of reliable power. If the grid becomes unstable in Louisiana, it can trigger fuel shortages that ripple across the entire country. Illinois presents a different kind of danger. Particularly in Chicago, the city and surrounding areas consume more electricity than many entire states. The aggressive shutdown of coal plants has left Illinois increasingly dependent on wind power, but the transmission lines needed to deliver this energy are woefully inadequate.
During polar vortex events, both wind and natural gas generation can be crippled simultaneously. Wind turbines can freeze. Natural gas supply gets diverted to heating homes, leaving less available for power generation. And Chicago's status as a major financial hub makes it a prime target for cyber attacks that could paralyze the grid. Massachusetts has created what some experts call an energy trap. The state has shut down nuclear and coal plants and blocked new natural gas pipelines. That's left Massachusetts reliant on liquefied natural gas that has to be shipped in from overseas. Winter storms can disrupt these shipments, and the state is literally just one major failure away from rolling blackouts. The state is investing heavily in offshore wind farms, but the transmission cables that carry power from these offshore installations are susceptible to damage from ship anchors and are incredibly difficult to maintain during storms. Meanwhile, the push for electric vehicles and electric heating is increasing demand without corresponding upgrades to the distribution infrastructure. New York's grid is stretched to its absolute limits, especially after the shutdown of the Indian Point nuclear plant near New York City. The transmission lines that carry power from upstate New York down to the city operate at maximum capacity almost constantly. Any major failure along this corridor could plunge millions into darkness. The interconnected nature of New York's grid means that small problems can cascade into massive outages incredibly quickly. New York City's underground distribution system is particularly vulnerable during heat waves, when demand peaks and temperatures soar. Florida is experiencing explosive population growth, and the grid simply cannot keep pace. Every month, tens of thousands of new residents move to Florida, each bringing their air conditioning units, electric vehicles, and modern power demands. The state relies heavily on natural gas plants, but the pipelines that supply them cross hurricane zones and are susceptible to storm damage. The salt air and humidity accelerate equipment degradation at an alarming rate. The grid lacks sufficient redundancy to reroute power during emergencies, which means when something fails, the effects are immediate and widespread. Arizona faces a unique combination of challenges. The state's grid is under immense strain from rapid population growth, extreme heat that's getting worse every year, and dwindling water supplies. The Palo Verde nuclear plant, the largest nuclear facility in the entire country, relies on treated wastewater for cooling. As drought conditions worsen, this resource is increasingly at risk. Solar power is abundant in Arizona, but solar panels actually lose efficiency in extreme heat, and they provide zero power at night, precisely when air conditioning demand remains high in the desert. North Carolina is dealing with inadequate natural gas pipeline capacity at the exact moment when its tech and manufacturing sectors are exploding. The state has become a hub for data centers and advanced manufacturing, both of which require enormous amounts of reliable power. We saw a preview of this during the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack, when fuel supplies were disrupted across the southeast. Physical security is also a major concern. Substations in North Carolina are vulnerable to attacks, and we've already seen incidents where gunfire knocked out power to tens of thousands of people. Texas operates its own isolated grid, which means it cannot rely on neighboring states for backup during emergencies. The deregulated market prioritizes cheap electricity over reliability, leaving the system operating on a razor's edge with minimal safety margins. The 2021 winter storm was a brutal wake-up call. Hundreds of people died. The economic damage ran into the billions, and yet many of the underlying vulnerabilities still haven't been fixed. Population growth continues to outpace infrastructure investment. California's aggressive renewable energy mandates have led to the shutdown of reliable power plants, with the state essentially betting on wind, solar, and batteries that don't yet exist at the scale needed. Wildfires have turned the grid into a liability. Utilities now preemptively shut off power to millions of people to prevent equipment from sparking fires. Think about that. In one of the wealthiest states in the wealthiest country in the world, millions of people regularly lose power, not because the system failed, but because keeping it running is too dangerous. Water shortages are undermining hydroelectric power, and the transmission system is ancient and overwhelmed. But here's the most important thing to understand. While these 11 states are at the highest risk, the true danger lies in the interconnected nature of America's grid. When one region fails, it can trigger cascading failures across entire regions. A blackout in Texas can affect fuel supplies in Louisiana. A failure in New York can cascade through New England. We're all connected, and that connection is both a strength and a critical vulnerability. So what do you do with this information? How do you protect yourself and your family? Let's talk about practical, actionable steps you can take right now. First, we need to address food security. When the power goes out, grocery stores empty within hours. Building a 90-day emergency food supply is essential. Focus on shelf-stable items. Rice, beans, canned goods, dried pasta, and properly stored grains can last for years. Learn to prepare meals without electricity. Practice cooking with alternative methods before you're forced to do during an emergency. Water is even more critical than food. Municipal water systems require electricity to operate. Store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for a minimum of 2 weeks. That's 14 gallons per person as an absolute minimum.
Invest in a quality water filter that doesn't require electricity. There are excellent gravity-fed filters available that can turn questionable water into safe drinking water. If you or anyone in your family relies on refrigerated medications like insulin, you need a backup plan immediately. Battery backups, generators, and alternative storage methods can be life-saving. Learn basic first aid and stock up on medical supplies. During extended outages, hospitals will be overwhelmed. Cell towers have limited battery backup, usually only a few hours. Equip yourself with the battery-powered or hand-crank radio to receive emergency information. Establish a communication plan with family members for when phones are down. Designate a meeting place. Cash is king during blackouts. ATMs don't work, credit card machines don't work. Keep enough physical currency on hand for at least 2 weeks of expenses. Store it securely, but make sure you can access it when you need it. Get to know your neighbors. Share information about preparedness. Consider joining or forming a local preparedness group. When crisis hits, people who have built relationships and trust beforehand will fare far better. Physical security becomes a real concern during extended blackouts. Secure your home. Have a plan to protect your family and your supplies. Learn skills that don't require electricity. Cooking without power, water purification, basic medical care, food preservation. These skills are invaluable and can't be taken away from you. More people die from extreme heat and cold during power outages than from any other cause. Identify the coolest room in your house for summer blackouts. Stock battery-powered fans. In winter, have safe backup heating methods and plenty of blankets. Never use gas-powered generators or grills indoors. Make paper backups of important information: phone numbers, medical records, insurance policies, and emergency plans. Paper doesn't need batteries or electricity. Have a plan to temporarily relocate if necessary. Establish connections with friends or family in other regions now. Plan your evacuation route. Here's something practical you can do this weekend. Conduct a practice blackout. Turn off your main breaker and see how well your preparations actually work. Try living for 24 or 48 hours without power. You'll quickly identify gaps in your plans. Keep your vehicle fueled. Gas stations require electricity to operate their pumps. Make it a habit to never let your tank drop below half. Consider safely storing extra fuel if possible. Don't forget special needs planning. Infants need formula and diapers. Elderly family members may have mobility issues or medication needs. Pets need food, water, and sometimes medication too. Finally, you need to overcome normalcy bias. This is the tendency to assume that tomorrow will be just like today. Normalcy bias kills more people during disasters than almost any other factor. Accept that major changes are coming. Accept that the grid is failing. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. America's electrical grid is struggling to meet modern demands while facing unprecedented threats. Major failures are not just possible, they're inevitable. But there is hope. Every step you take to prepare increases your resilience. You can't fix the grid, but you can prepare for its failure. Don't wait for the first major blackout to be your wake-up call. The time to prepare is right now, while the lights are still on. If this video opened your eyes to the reality we're facing, share it with someone you care about. Subscribe to Crisis Horizon for more critical preparedness information. And remember, the best time to prepare is while the lights are still on. Stay prepared, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.